That Thanksgiving Eve, the crisp November air of Portland, Oregon, bit through my worn sweater. I stood before the sleek, modern door of my parents' new condominium, the phone still warm in my hand from Uncle Arthur's booming call. "Dave, get over here right now." "I'm at your parents' new place," he'd announced, his voice bubbling with a secret. Uncle Arthur, a brilliant but eccentric architect, rarely left his Arizona estate. Seeing him, especially for the holidays, brought a genuine smile. I pushed the door open, and the comforting scent of roasted turkey and warm spices enveloped me. Uncle Arthur sat at the head of the polished dining table, his eyes sparkling. He rose, pulling me into a tight embrace. His familiar scent of cedar and aged paper, always clinging to his tweed jackets, instantly calmed me. "Dave, do you like this condo?" he asked, his voice full of pride. "Yes, it's a beautiful condo, Uncle," I replied, a knot forming in my stomach. "But it's my parents' condo." A moment of deafening silence. Uncle Arthur's face stiffened, his eyes narrowing as they darted from me to my father, Robert, then to my stepmother, Victoria, whose forced smile plastered on her face. My father, usually composed, turned sickly white, his hand trembling. Victoria coughed, a delicate sound forcing a brittle smile, her eyes glinting with panic. "Your parents' condo?" Uncle Arthur repeated, his voice dropping, cold and sharp. "Dave, explain yourself." I didn't understand, but a primal unease surged within me. I glanced at my father, desperate for an explanation, but he lowered his head. Victoria quickly interjected, her voice trembling slightly. "Arthur, there must be a misunderstanding. This is the family's condo." But Uncle Arthur kept his gaze fixed on me. A chilling certainty washed over me. A terrible secret, one that would unravel my world, was about to be revealed. "Hello, my name is Dave Miller. The story I'm about to tell is about years lived in the shadow of profound injustice, overlooked by the family who were supposed to cherish me. If you've ever felt like you didn't truly belong, like an unwelcome outsider in your own home, perhaps you'll understand. But even if your life has been filled with warmth, I still want you to hear this story. A story about a boy who grew into a man with a heart full of scars, and how he, against all odds, found a flicker of light amidst the darkness. I was born in a quiet, suburban town outside Portland. My mother, Sarah, a vibrant woman who ran a local bookstore, passed away shortly after giving birth to me due to unforeseen complications. She was the only pure light I never got to know. My father, Robert Miller, an emotionally distant real estate agent, was stern and kept a cold distance, as if my existence was a painful reminder of his grief. When I was 4, he remarried Victoria, a woman with a chillingly cold smile and calculating eyes. A year later, they had a son, Lucas, or Luke. Luke became the undisputed center of their universe, their golden child. To my father, Luke embodied pride, the gleaming future. To Victoria, Luke was everything she lived to protect. And me, I was the stepchild, the unwanted kid, an invisible shadow. From a young age, I felt the gnawing difference. When I was 6, I remember sitting on the cold living room floor, watching Luke receive a gleaming remote-controlled drone. I, on the other hand, received a flimsy plastic toy airplane with broken propellers, which my father declared good enough for me. "Luke needs new things to stimulate his intellect," Victoria would purr, her voice dripping with condescension. When I brought home straight A's, my father would barely glance at the report card, offering a dismissive nod. "Not bad, but don't get complacent." If Luke managed a C on a quiz, the house erupted in cheers. I wasn't a jealous kid. All I yearned for was to be loved, to be acknowledged. But as the years bled into weeks, I painfully realized that in my father's and Victoria's cold, dismissive eyes, I was simply never good enough. Victoria, with her insidious passive aggression, would often say things designed to sting, disguised as advice. "Dave, why don't you try to be more like Luke? He's so outgoing." Or, with a saccharine smile, "You should be eternally grateful to live in this lovely house." These words cut into my spirit, leaving invisible wounds. I started to internalize their cruel narratives, to wonder, was I truly a burden? Our family wasn't poor, but we weren't elite. My father worked diligently as a regional manager at a real estate firm, while Victoria devoted her existence to doting on Luke. I wasn't allowed to complain. My father always reminded me I was lucky to have a roof over my head, a roof that never truly felt like it belonged to me. My room was a tiny attic space, with a single dusty window overlooking an alley, a constant reminder of my relegated status. Luke luxuriated in a spacious, sun-filled room overflowing with the latest toys. Once, I dared to ask my father why I couldn't have a room downstairs like Luke. He snapped, "Don't ask for too much, Dave. Know your place. You're lucky to have what you have." I grew up with constant reminders that I was insignificant. But despite the relentless emotional assault, I refused to drown in self-pity. I learned to plaster on a smile, to pretend everything was fine. I told myself that one day I would break free, escape this suffocating shadow, and prove I was not the useless person they believed me to be. When I turned 18, I graduated high school with respectable grades. Predictably, no one at home even bothered to notice. I harbored a quiet dream of going to college, of studying engineering, something that would make Uncle Arthur, the only person who had ever shown me genuine warmth, proud. But that fragile dream was quickly crushed. One evening, I timidly approached my father, asking about scholarships for college. He looked at me with those familiar, cold, unseeing eyes. "Dave, we simply don't have enough money," he stated, devoid of regret. "Luke needs to be prioritized. He has immense potential, and we have to invest in his future." I stood there, stunned, feeling the ground crumbling beneath me. Luke, who spent his days glued to video games, was the chosen one. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I simply nodded and silently left the room, my heart a leaden weight. That night, I made an unbreakable vow. If my parents didn't believe in me, then I, and I alone, would believe in myself. I started working almost immediately, securing a job at a local grocery store, initially as a cashier, then quickly transitioning to stockroom worker. Long, grueling night shifts, working through holidays, and dealing with demanding customers left me exhausted. But I never complained. Every dollar I earned was a step toward achieving my escape. With my meager savings, I rented a tiny, dilapidated apartment on the outskirts of town. It had stained walls, a leaky faucet, and a smell of stale dust. But at least it was mine. It was a sanctuary where I no longer had to endure Victoria's snide remarks or my father's disheartening looks. Meanwhile, Luke was living a pampered life, fully supported by our parents. He attended a prestigious private university, drove a brand new car, and never had to lift a finger in honest labor. On one particularly soul-crushing day, Victoria, adorned in an expensive designer outfit, glided into the grocery store where I worked. She spotted me behind the counter, her lips curling into a cruel smirk. "Dave, is this what you're doing with your life? Such a shame. Luke will never have to stoop to such menial work." I gritted my teeth, forcing a strained smile. Why wasn't I worthy of the same opportunities, the same love, the same support as Luke? Those years, I lived in profound loneliness. I didn't have many friends because every hour was consumed by work and saving every precious dollar, but I wasn't entirely alone. Uncle Arthur was the one glorious, shining bright spot. He lived in Chicago, running a massive, successful architectural firm. Occasionally, he would call me. Those calls were my lifeline. He would talk animatedly about his latest projects, ask genuinely about my life, and always offer words of encouragement. "Dave, you're a strong young man. Don't let anyone make you think otherwise." I never told him the agonizing truth about how my father and Victoria treated me. I didn't want him to worry. Uncle Arthur was also the only person who ever truly spoke to me about my mother, Sarah. He described her as a gentle, intellectually curious woman who loved books and dreamed of a just world. He blamed himself for not being there when she gave birth to me, explaining that a work crisis had kept him away. "If I had been there, Dave, things might have been so different," he'd said once, his voice thick with regret. I only wished I could have met her, to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that I had been loved unconditionally. As the years passed, I grew accustomed to my fiercely independent, solitary life. I learned to fix the plumbing, to cook simple meals, and, most importantly, to guard my heart from breaking further. But deep inside, there was always a gnawing emptiness, the void of a true family. I had no idea that a colossal secret was being meticulously hidden by my father and Victoria. A secret that, when it finally exploded into the open, would irrevocably change absolutely everything. When I was 21, I was still living in my tiny rented apartment, perpetually working night shifts. Empty mornings, simple meals, and fragmented sleep had become my existence. I didn't have much, but I had my freedom, my own sacred space, and a fragile shred of self-respect. One early summer afternoon, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar text message. It was from Victoria. "Come to the new condo tonight. Address is 1432 Willow Creek. Small party." I read it 3 times. I had never heard them mention moving. I hesitated, a profound sense of foreboding washing over me. Part of me wanted to ignore it. But then, a flicker of naive hope ignited. Maybe, I thought, this was a chance to reconnect. I wanted, with surprising intensity, to go. Maybe to congratulate them. Maybe to prove I was no longer the sullen, quiet, broken kid they had dismissed. I had changed, grown stronger, and I harbored a foolish hope that maybe they had too. I stopped by a liquor store and carefully picked out the most affordable yet respectable bottle of red wine. Then, I swung by the local embroidery shop to collect a handkerchief I had ordered, a small gift with the initials RM for my father. I didn't have much money, but I was determined that the gift would convey thoughtfulness. The new condo was located in a newly developed, highly exclusive residential area on the west side of town. As my beat-up car turned onto a street lined with fresh maple trees and manicured lawns, it felt as though I was entering another world. 2-story, semi-classical houses with gleaming wooden doors and red brick steps lined the pristine street, each a testament to wealth. I parked my car in front of the unit. It was a stately, cream-colored home with a stone-step front yard and gracefully arched windows. I got out, clutching the wine and the gift, and stood still for a few seconds. My heart was pounding, not with excitement, but with an indescribable, unsettling feeling, as if I was about to step into something that fundamentally did not belong to me. Victoria opened the door, meticulously curated in a shimmering silk dress, her makeup flawless. "Oh, Dave, come in," she said, her smile thin and artificial. I stepped inside, my eyes taking in the spacious, immaculately decorated living room with glossy wooden floors and a grand granite fireplace. Family photos adorned the walls. My father and Victoria's wedding picture, Luke proudly holding a trophy. Unsurprisingly, no photos of me. My father was in the gleaming kitchen, casually opening expensive wine, dressed in a crisp white shirt, looking more relaxed than I had ever seen him. When he caught sight of me, he merely offered a single imperceptible nod. "Oh, you're here," nothing more. I handed over the wine and gift, my voice neutral. "Congratulations on the new condo, Dad." He took them and without a word, set them on a counter, unopened, before turning his back. The party consisted of a few selected people, new neighbors, old friends of my father's, and a colleague. They chatted animatedly about the exclusive neighborhood and property prices. I sat quietly in a plush armchair, a silent observer, feeling utterly detached, an unwelcome ghost at a feast. No one bothered to ask where I was from. No one noticed that I quietly poured myself water instead of wine. "We had to search absolutely forever to find this perfect condo," Victoria announced, practically bursting with pride. "Luckily, we managed to close the deal just before the market prices shot up," she added, with a sickeningly sweet smile directed at my father. "Gregory has a truly remarkable eye for properties." My father nodded, a self-satisfied smile playing on his lips. I sat there, trying to force a polite smile. I genuinely wanted to congratulate them. I didn't know, could not possibly have known, that I was congratulating them for seizing a magnificent gift that, by all rights, belonged solely and irrevocably to me. That night, when I returned to my cold, unwelcoming apartment, I picked up my phone, intending to send Uncle Arthur a quick message. But I hesitated. He was getting older, constantly busy. I didn't want to bother him. I set the phone back down, lay on my old bed, and stared at the cracked ceiling. Then I drifted off to sleep, completely unaware of the devastating truth lying silently beneath my feet, like an unexploded bomb waiting to detonate. After the housewarming party, everything settled back into its familiar rhythm. No one, not my father, not Victoria, not even Luke, ever mentioned that day again. No one bothered to ask what I truly thought of the new condo, and of course, no one brought up the possibility of me moving in. But then, something undeniably strange began to happen. From that point onward, for every major holiday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Luke's birthday, Even my father and Victoria's wedding anniversary, I received a curt, almost demanding invitation to their new condo. They weren't warm, heartfelt invitations, but cold, impersonal text messages. 6 p.m. Come for dinner. Luke's looking forward to seeing you. We have guests. Be on time. I went, each and every time, not because I believed they had changed, but because I still felt the inescapable duty of a son. Each time, I meticulously brought a small, chosen gift. But without fail, my gifts were usually set aside, unopened, and no one offered a sincere word of thanks. And the strangest thing of all, they started pulling me into their meticulously staged family photos. The first time was that Christmas. Victoria, with a sudden, startling warmth, called me over. Dave, stand closer to Luke. We're taking a family picture. I was genuinely surprised and stepped forward awkwardly. My father stood rigidly in the middle, his arm draped around Luke's shoulders. I stood at the very edge of the frame, forcing an awkward smile. As the camera clicked, I felt like a prop thrown in to complete a superficial tableau. In the bewildering times that followed, they relentlessly kept pulling me into these staged photos. At first, it was with the whole happy family. Later, sometimes, it was just with my father. Once, Victoria even placed her hand on my shoulder, smiling brightly for the camera. I couldn't comprehend what sinister game they were playing. Before, I had always been excluded from family snapshots. The photos in the old house never featured me. So why, I asked once, lightly, have we been taking so many family photos lately? Victoria laughed, a brittle sound. Oh, Dave, darling, we just want to capture memories. You're part of the family too, aren't you? I nodded, but my heart felt heavy, burdened by the unspoken deceit. I wasn't naive anymore. I knew something was profoundly wrong, but I couldn't put a name to the insidious nature of their charade. I only felt like an unwilling pawn, forced into a meticulously fabricated frame I had never truly belonged to. It was as if I were playing the role of the harmonious, dutiful eldest son in a photo meant solely for display, a performance for an unseen audience. And then on Christmas when I was 23, the devastating truth finally erupted. It was bitterly cold. I had just finished my usual brutal shift at the supermarket at 4:30 in the afternoon and was sitting in my unheated apartment, planning to show up a little late to my parents' condo. My phone suddenly rang. It was Uncle Arthur. Dave, come over right now. I'm at your new condo, 1432 Willow Creek. I wanted to surprise you. I froze. Uncle Arthur was here? I quickly threw on my thin jacket and rushed out, my mind a chaotic swirl of questions. Why hadn't he told me he was coming? And why was he at my father's new condo? When I arrived, the house was ablaze with festive lights. I knocked, my heart hammering. Victoria opened the door, her forced smile stiffening when she saw me. Dave, why are you? She trailed off, her eyes darting nervously. Then I heard Uncle Arthur's booming voice from inside. Dave, come in, my boy. Don't just stand there in the cold. Uncle Arthur stood regally in the center of the living room, his silver hair gleaming under the chandelier. He pulled me into a tight embrace, a hug that carried both excitement and underlying tension. I wanted to surprise the whole family, he said, his gaze sweeping around the lavish room. This condo? It's absolutely wonderful, isn't it? Are you truly happy living here, Dave? I hesitated, an overwhelming wave of unease rising within me. I don't live here, Uncle. I just visit for holidays. Uncle Arthur's face instantly transformed. His smile vanished, replaced by a steely glint in his narrowed eyes, which swiftly shifted from me to my father Robert, who stood awkwardly near the fireplace, clutching a glass of whiskey. Victoria quickly jumped in, her voice syrupy sweet. Arthur, darling, there must be a misunderstanding. Dave adores living independently, don't you, dear? She looked at me, commanding me to agree, but Uncle Arthur fixed his gaze on me, his voice lowering, each word a hammer blow of truth. Dave, tell me the absolute truth. You don't live here, do you? I took a deep breath, feeling the crushing weight of the silent room. I live in a rented apartment, Uncle, on the south side of town. I pay for it with my supermarket wages. Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. My father bowed his head, his hand tightening around his glass. Victoria started to speak, her voice trembling. Arthur, we honestly thought it was best for Dave. He really wanted to be independent, and Luke needs space too. Enough! Uncle Arthur cut her off, his voice sharp, echoing through the stunned silence. Robert, explain yourself. 2 years ago, I sent you $750,000 to buy a 3-bedroom condo in this very neighborhood. A generous gift for Dave to give him a solid start in life. I made it explicitly clear. The condo was for Dave, and Dave alone. So why is he living in a rundown, dingy apartment while you and your new family are luxuriating in that very condo, the one meant for him? My father's face went ghastly pale. Victoria opened her mouth to protest, but no sound escaped. I stood there, utterly stunned, feeling the ground disintegrate beneath my feet. A condo. For me, $750,000. I looked at Uncle Arthur, then back at my father, desperately searching for an explanation. But there was no misunderstanding. My father finally set his glass down, his voice shaky. I thought the condo would be better used by the whole family, Arthur. Dave's independent. He doesn't need a big place like this. Luke's young. He needs a good environment. Doesn't need, Uncle Arthur roared, taking a menacing step toward my father. You're saying he doesn't need it? Dave, the grandson I entrusted to your care, is living in a dilapidated apartment, working grueling night shifts, while you and your wife live in the very condo that was meant for him. What in God's name did you do with the money I sent? You put the condo in your name, didn't you, Robert? My father didn't answer. He lowered his head. Victoria, miraculously regaining her voice, quickly interjected, her tone laced with desperation. Arthur, you don't understand. Dave isn't my biological son. Luke is the future of this family. Dave, he doesn't deserve a condo like this. Shut up, Uncle Arthur shouted, his voice echoing. Doesn't deserve? Dave is Sarah's flesh and blood, my daughter's son. He's my grandson, and I trusted you, Robert, to take care of him. But what have you done? You stole the magnificent gift I meant solely for him. You deceived me with these monstrously fake family photos. He pointed a trembling finger at the large framed picture on the wall. I truly believed Dave was living happily here. I believed every single one of the photos you meticulously sent me. But it turns out it was all a despicable charade. A performance to hide your sickening greed and betrayal. My throat tightened. The photos, the countless times I was called over to pose, it was all a heinous deception. All to fool Uncle Arthur, to make him believe I was an integral part of this happy family. I looked at my father, pleading for an explanation, an apology, but he remained silent, his eyes fixed on the floor. Dave, Uncle Arthur turned to me, his voice softening. Go get your things. You're coming to Chicago with me. This condo, I'll make absolutely certain it belongs to you, as I originally intended. And you, Robert, he said, turning back to my father, his voice a blade of ice. I'll be speaking with my lawyer first thing tomorrow morning. You'll answer in full for what you've done. Victoria burst into hysterical tears, but I felt no pity. My father finally spoke, his voice a whisper. Dave, I just wanted what was best for the family. Best for the family? I repeated, my voice calm, unnervingly cold. You never, not once, considered me part of this family. I've spent my entire life trying to make you proud, to earn your affection, but all you ever saw was Luke. You snatched away my chance at a future, and you didn't even bother to tell me the truth. I turned away from him. Uncle Arthur placed a comforting hand on my shoulder, his eyes filled with sadness and determination. Let's go, Dave. You don't need to stay here another minute. The biting chill of that Christmas night bit into my skin as we stepped out of the house. Uncle Arthur led me to a sleek, black SUV. To the hotel first, James, Uncle Arthur said. I slid into the plush back seat beside him, feeling as though I was stepping into a different world. Are you okay, Dave? Uncle Arthur asked, his eyes gentle yet piercing. I don't know, Uncle, I replied, my voice hoarse. Everything's happening so fast. I still don't fully understand. He nodded, placing a reassuring hand on my knee. I know, my boy, I know. But from now on, things will be different. You'll come to Chicago with me. We'll start over, a clean slate. Just the two of us. I looked out the window, the festive Christmas lights of Portland blurring past. Chicago, a bustling city I'd only ever heard about, was where I would begin again. The very next morning, we took an early flight to Chicago. I sat by the window, gazing down at the endless, pristine, snow-covered fields, feeling an overwhelming sense of liberation. Uncle Arthur sat quietly beside me, engrossed in a business newspaper. But every now and then, he would glance at me, offering an encouraging smile. When the plane finally touched down at O'Hare Airport, a bracing Chicago wind greeted us. James, Uncle Arthur's trusted driver, was waiting. We drove through the bustling city streets, where towering skyscrapers pierced the winter sky. I had never seen anything like it. The car turned into an upscale suburban neighborhood, where streets were lined with ancient oaks and magnificent mansions. James stopped in front of a large iron gate. "Is this your house, Uncle?" I asked. Uncle Arthur laughed heartily, clapping me on the shoulder. "Welcome to my home, Dave. And now, it's your home too." Uncle Arthur's mansion wasn't just a house, it was a palace. The intricately carved wooden front door opened into a grand foyer with marble floors, a spiral staircase, and abstract paintings. The living room was easily 3 times the size of my entire apartment, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of a lush garden. The rich scent of pine and luxurious leather from the furniture made me feel as though I had stepped into a 5-star hotel. I don't know what to say," I whispered, still clutching my small, tattered bag. "You don't need to say anything, my boy," Uncle Arthur replied, leading me upstairs. "Your room is here." He opened the door to a spacious, sun-drenched bedroom with a king-size bed, a walnut desk, and a large window overlooking the garden. A brand new laptop sat invitingly on the desk. "This is where you can start over," he said. I sat cautiously on the edge of the bed, feeling utterly disoriented. Just hours ago, I had been in my rundown apartment. Now, I was here. But alongside the awe and gratitude, a lingering ache remained. The house in Portland, the house that was rightfully mine, still felt like a cruel thorn. That evening, Uncle Arthur took me to a Michelin-starred restaurant. We sat in a quiet corner booth, the flickering candlelight casting soft shadows. He ordered an expensive bottle of wine, but I only took a small sip. "Dave," he began, his voice low and serious, "there are things we need to talk about. About your father, the condo, and what truly happened." I nodded, my heart pounding. 2 years ago, he recounted, his voice carefully controlled. "I sent Robert $750,000 to buy the condo in Willow Creek. I wanted it to be a personal gift for you, Dave, a strong foundation for your future. I was incredibly busy with the company, unable to personally oversee the purchase, so I foolishly trusted Robert. But I was wrong, terribly wrong." I clenched my fists. "So, Dad kept the condo for himself?" "That's not all, Dave," Uncle Arthur said, his voice thick with anger. "I've been sending Robert money for you since you were small, not just for the condo. I sent money every single year to cover your school fees, your clothes, everything you needed to grow up in the best conditions. I honestly thought Robert was taking proper care of you. But today, when I heard you talk about living in a rented apartment, working grueling night shifts, I realized he kept it all for himself and his new family. Every single penny. It felt as though someone had punched me in the chest. School fees, clothes, the myriad of things I never had. All those years wearing shabby hand-me-downs, subsisting on cheap instant noodles. It could have been so different. My father had not only stolen the condo, but also every opportunity and comfort Uncle Arthur had intended for me. The weight of this betrayal was crushing. I didn't know about any of that money," I said, my voice choked with tears. "Dad never told me, I thought. I thought he didn't have enough, so I had to manage on my own." Uncle Arthur slammed his hand down on the table. "That bastard," he growled. "I trusted him with you, Dave, thinking he'd treat you well. But he betrayed me, and he betrayed your mother, Sarah, the woman who loved you more than life itself." Hearing my mother's name, especially spoken with such raw pain, made my eyes sting. The thought that my father had stolen what both she and Uncle Arthur had planned for me ignited a fierce fury within me. "What are you going to do, Uncle?" I asked. "I'm going to sue Robert," he said, his voice cold as Arctic ice. "I'll make absolutely certain the condo is legally transferred to you, and I'll cut off all financial support to him immediately." I stared blankly. Part of me wanted my father to pay, but another part, the part that yearned for peace, just wanted to let it all go. I was utterly exhausted by resentment. I didn't want my new life to be tainted by lawsuits. "Uncle," I said, my voice soft but firm. Don't sue him. I know you're angry, and so am I. But it's already happened. The damage is done. I don't want to drag this out. Cutting off his financial support is enough to make them realize. I just want to start over here, with you, unburdened by the past. Uncle Arthur looked at me, his eyes softening. Are you absolutely sure, Dave? You have every right. I'm sure, I replied. That condo, it doesn't matter anymore. I want to build my future, not live forever trying to fix the broken pieces of the past. He nodded slowly, placing a warm hand on my shoulder. You're stronger than I ever thought possible, Dave. Your mother would be incredibly proud of you. The weeks that followed in Chicago were an emotional, transformative journey. I moved permanently into Uncle Arthur's mansion, and each day felt like I was learning to live again. Uncle Arthur didn't just give me a luxurious new home. He gave me an invaluable chance to rediscover myself, to heal, to finally thrive. He took me to visit his architectural company. He proudly introduced me to everyone as Will Miller's grandson, and for the first time, I felt truly recognized, seen as a person of value. Would you like to try working here? He asked one day as we stood overlooking a massive construction site. You can start with small projects. Learn as you go. I hesitated. I had never imagined myself working in construction, but the unwavering trust in Uncle Arthur's eyes made me want to try. I'll give it a shot, Uncle, I said. He laughed heartily. No one's good from the start, Dave, but you have heart and you have determination. I started working at his company, initially as an assistant in the planning department. The work wasn't easy, but with each passing day, I learned to read complex blueprints and even timidly contributed my own ideas, which were respected. My colleagues gradually began to look at me with genuine respect, their initial skepticism replaced by admiration. They saw me work tirelessly and steadfastly refused to rely on Uncle Arthur for any special treatment. Outside of work, I eagerly explored Chicago. I walked through its lively streets, visited museums, and spent hours in coffee shops, engrossed in books. For the first time, I felt like I had the luxury of time to breathe, to dream, to simply exist, and, most importantly, to become a better, more authentic version of myself. Though life in Chicago was a constant source of hope, the emotional scars didn't fade easily. Some nights, I would lie awake, and my mind would transport me back to my old apartment, hearing Victoria's mocking voice or seeing my father's cold gaze. I often wondered if I truly deserved this wonderful new life. Uncle Arthur, with his quiet wisdom, noticed when the shadows of the past crept in. One evening, as we sat by the fireplace, he handed me an old, elegantly framed photo. It was my mother, Sarah, smiling brightly, holding a small dog. Your mother always wanted you to be happy, Dave, he said. I couldn't be there for her, but I won't let that happen with you. I held the frame, tears falling down my cheeks. I wish I could have met her, I whispered. You're more like her than you know, he said. She was strong, but incredibly gentle. You have her heart, Dave. Those words were like a soothing balm to my wounded soul. I started keeping a journal, writing down my thoughts, my dreams, and even my pain. I no longer wanted to run from my past. I wanted to face it, to understand it, and to let it make me stronger. One morning, about 3 months after moving to Chicago, I received a letter from Portland. It was from my father. I opened it, my hands trembling. Inside was a single sheet of paper with handwritten lines. Dave, I know I have no right to write this letter. What I've done is unforgivable. I was wrong to keep the condo, to keep the money your grandfather sent for you. I let the pain of losing your mother twist me into a terrible father. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I want you to know that I regret it. Victoria and Luke have moved out of the condo. I'm in the painful process of transferring ownership to you. I hope one day you can look at me without seeing only disappointment. Robert. I read the letter 3 times. My emotions, a chaotic mix of residual anger, lingering pain, and a faint sense of relief. I didn't know if I could ever truly forgive him. The years of being abandoned, of being treated as worthless, could not be erased by a single belated letter. But I knew, with newfound clarity, that I didn't want to carry the burden of resentment forever. I showed the letter to Uncle Arthur. He read it silently, then said, "It's your decision, Dave. If you want to take the condo, I'll help you. If not, I'll respect your choice." I thought about the condo in Willow Creek. It had once been a burning dream, but now I didn't need it to feel worthy. I don't want the condo, Uncle, I said, my voice clear and firm. I want to sell it and use the money to go to college. I want to become an engineer like I always dreamed. Uncle Arthur smiled, his eyes sparkling with pride, tears shimmering. That's my grandson, he said. I immediately enrolled in a prestigious university in Chicago, majoring in civil engineering. With Uncle Arthur's support and the money from selling the Portland condo, I finally began the educational journey I once thought impossible. The first days weren't easy. I was older than most of my classmates, and the demanding workload kept me up late. But I didn't give up. Whenever I felt like quitting, I thought of my mother, of Uncle Arthur, and of the promise I had made to myself. I would never let my past define my future. In Chicago, I also found new friends, genuine connections with people who didn't know my painful past, but liked me for who I was. I joined an engineering club where I met Emma, a brilliant, quick-witted girl with a radiant smile. For the first time, I felt like I had a true community, a place where I authentically belonged. Uncle Arthur remained my greatest anchor, always reminding me that I was stronger than I ever thought possible. Some evenings, we would sit by the fireplace, sharing stories about my mother, about his company, and about my burgeoning dreams. The condo in Portland was sold, and the substantial money was deposited into my tuition account. My father didn't contact me again, and I didn't reach out to him. Maybe one day, I thought, I'll be ready to talk, to truly forgive, but for now, I wanted to focus solely on the present, on the incredible future I was diligently building. 2 years have passed since that fateful Christmas night. Chicago has become my true home, not just because of its bustling streets, but because it's where I finally found myself. I'm now in my second year of college, still majoring in civil engineering. And each day, I feel closer to my dream of becoming a successful engineer, a dream my father once crushed. I found a supportive community of friends, a clear purpose, and most importantly, a profound sense that I deserve everything I've achieved. But while I was building my new life, back in Portland, my father's family, Robert, Victoria, and Luke, was slowly falling apart. I didn't know much about them, except for a few whispered rumors. They said my father had lost his job, Victoria no longer hosted lavish parties, and Luke had dropped out of college. I didn't dwell on it until one day, the past, uninvited, came knocking. One late autumn afternoon, while studying in the university library, my phone buzzed. It was an unfamiliar number with a Portland area code. I hesitated but answered. Victoria's voice came through, weak and trembling, utterly devoid of arrogance. "Dave, it's Victoria," she said, faltering. "I know you're busy, but I need to talk to you about the family." I gripped the phone tighter. "Family?" I asked, my tone colder than perhaps I intended. "What's going on?" "We're in trouble, Dave. Real trouble." I stayed silent, letting her continue. Victoria launched into a long, rambling story. After Uncle Arthur had cut off financial support, my father had lost his income. He had been fired, unable to focus. Victoria, having never held a real job, couldn't find work. They had sold most of their possessions to pay off debts, but it wasn't enough. They had been forced to move to a small, run-down apartment on the very edge of town, which Victoria described with disdain as cramped and utterly unworthy. And Luke, Victoria paused, her voice choking. "Luke's struggling, Dave. He's working at a fast food restaurant, but he's not used to it. He doesn't know how to handle things like that. He desperately needs help." I let out a harsh, bitter laugh. Luke, the spoiled little brother, now had to work to survive. Luke, who had a brand new car and never had to worry about money, was now struggling in the very same type of menial job I had been forced to do since I was 18. I felt a fleeting sense of satisfaction, quickly replaced by a hollow emptiness. "Victoria," I said, my voice calm but unyielding. "You're calling me for help now? After everything that happened? After Dad stole my condo? After you yourself said I didn't deserve it? You truly think I'll forget the years I was systematically treated like an outsider?" Victoria was silent for a moment, then spoke, her voice almost a whisper. "Dave, I know we were wrong, but we're family. Luke's your brother. You can't turn your back on your family." "Family?" I repeated, my voice laced with bitter sarcasm. You and Dad never treated me like family. You explicitly said I wasn't worthy. Dad took not just the condo, but the money Uncle Arthur sent for my education, and now you want me to help Luke, the one who was always favored. No, Victoria. Let Luke learn to stand on his own 2 feet, just like I had to. Let your family figure it out. I don't owe you anything. Not a single thing. I hung up the phone, my hands still gripping it tightly. Victoria's desperate words echoed in my mind. Family. Luke needs help. But those words, once a source of deep yearning, no longer had the power to sway me. Over the past 2 years, I hadn't heard directly from my father, Victoria, or Luke. Bits of gossip from Portland reached me, but I never sought them out. I was too busy in my new life. My challenging classes, exciting projects at Uncle Arthur's company, and evenings spent talking, laughing, and sharing dreams with Emma. But those rumors crept in like cold gusts from a forgotten past. My father, Robert, had once been confident, always maintaining a calm, authoritative presence. He worked tirelessly, earning a substantial salary. But after that devastating Christmas night, everything began to unravel for them. His company faced market struggles, and he, distracted and crippled by family tensions, couldn't hold his managerial position. He was fired 6 months after the incident and hadn't found stable work since. The savings he had accumulated from Uncle Arthur's money had been squandered on frivolous luxuries. When Uncle Arthur's money stopped flowing, they could no longer sustain that unsustainable lifestyle. Victoria, once so proud of being the perfect housewife, found herself unable to adapt to earning a living. She had never worked a day in her life. When the family was forced to move out of the Willow Creek condo, they relocated to a small, cramped 2-bedroom apartment on the very edge of town, which Victoria still called unworthy. The apartment, I heard, was run down and neglected. They had sold Luke's expensive car, his vast collection of high-end toys, and even Victoria's prized jewelry, but the debts kept piling up. Luke, once hailed as the gleaming future of the Miller family, had dropped out of college after one disastrous semester. Accustomed to being pampered, he couldn't handle the pressure of academics. He took a job at a fast food restaurant, but even that job was something he was utterly unprepared for. His coworkers complained he was slow and unfocused. He was fired after 3 months and had bounced from one temporary job to another. I learned these details through whispers from old acquaintances. Uncle Arthur's friends, still in touch with him, shared the story of Robert's family's downfall as a cautionary tale. They said Victoria was desperately trying to sell low-quality products online without success. My father worked part-time at a grimy auto repair shop, but his meager income wasn't enough. They lived in profound hardship, facing the brutal reality I had known since childhood, scarcity and struggle. A month after Victoria's desperate call, I received another letter from my father. It wasn't an apology, but a desperate plea. He wrote that the family was on the brink of bankruptcy. The apartment was at risk of eviction. Luke, after being fired from his 3rd job, had given up entirely and started hanging out with a bad crowd, drinking heavily. My father wrote that he had no one else left to turn to, that I was their last hope. He used the word family repeatedly. I read the letter in my spacious room at Uncle Arthur's mansion. Each word felt like a sharp knife, reopening old wounds. I remembered the years of being pushed aside, of being called unworthy. I remembered the lonely nights wondering why I wasn't loved. And I remembered that devastating Christmas night when I learned everything I had longed for had been stolen from me. I called Uncle Arthur and told him about the letter. He listened patiently. "What are you going to do?" he asked, his voice steady. "I'm not going to help them," I said, my voice firm. "They had their chance. Luke had everything I didn't. If he has to work to survive now, that's a painful but necessary lesson." I pulled myself up from nothing, Uncle. I built my life from scratch. I don't owe them anything. Not a single thing. Uncle Arthur nodded, a subtle shift in his expression telling me he approved. While Robert's family struggled, I continued my journey of growth in Chicago. I aced my midterms, and Emma, my increasingly close friend, threw a party to celebrate. She had become an essential part of my life, making me feel like I was enough. I took on more challenging work at Uncle Arthur's company, leading a small construction job, my confidence soaring. Each step was proof that I didn't need my father's or Victoria's validation to succeed. I also began quietly writing a book, not merely to recount my story, but to document the invaluable lessons I'd learned about resilience and overcoming the scars of the past. The very act of writing it was a powerful form of healing. One crisp winter day, as I walked through the bustling streets of downtown Chicago, I unexpectedly saw Luke. He was standing on a street corner, his thin jacket doing little to ward off the biting wind, his face gaunt, his eyes sunken. I stopped, unsure whether to approach. But he saw me first, and his eyes, hollow and defeated, lit up with a faint flicker of hope. "Dave," he called, his voice hoarse. How are you?" I nodded, keeping a careful distance. "I'm fine, Luke." "You?" He gave a weak, pathetic smile. "Not great," he admitted. Things aren't like they used to be. "Can you help me?" "Just a little. I don't have anyone else." I looked at him, remembering the countless times he was favored, the times I was casually pushed aside. "Luke," I said, my voice calm but utterly unyielding. I had to stand on my own when no one helped me. "You can too. Get a job. Learn to take responsibility for your own life. Don't look to me to fix what your family did wrong." I turned and walked away, continuing down Chicago's snow-covered streets. I didn't look back, not because I didn't care, but because I had, finally and unequivocally, chosen myself. I had chosen my healing, my future, my peace, over the endless, toxic demands of a family that had never truly been one.